Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I had my You're Doing Great mug again today, and I actually have some lemon balm elderberry tea because it's good for your immunity. So we're drinking that today. So today's video is going to be my February reading wrap up. So we're just going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February. Now I am filming this when I do have a couple of days left in February, but I don't think there's going to be a way for me to finish another book in the next couple of days, so I just went ahead and cut it off here. And we're just going to talk about all the books that I read in February and give you my thoughts on them. So the first book that I read in February, because I had it on hold on Libby and it came up at the end of January and I was like, well, guess I'm going to read this in February, was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now I did just film a little mini review for a couple of books and this is one of them, so I'm not going to get into this really deeply, but I will give you some general thoughts. I wanted to read this because it's very hyped and I bought it a little while ago because I was like, I want to give it a shot. I've never read Holly Black's writing and I just wanted to know what the fuss was about. Turns out I don't know what the fuss is about. I'm not sure what I expected going into this book, but this was not it. Like what the book actually was not what I was expecting. I felt that despite the bullying aspects and a little bit of treachery and court politics, that this was a little boring. Not enough to completely lose your interest in the story and finding out what happens, but also in a way that you don't have a lot to root for. To me, I felt like I didn't have a lot to root for. You're just seeing these human characters get bullied by these fae, and then one of them's like, oh, but I just bully you in public, but privately I can't stop thinking about you. But it's not even really romance focused. And I thought, because it's a YA, and because this is like a power couple of YA, you hear about this power couple all the time, I thought the romance aspect would be more prevalent, and it's not, which is fine, but it's just not what I was expecting going into it. It seemed like when people talked about it that the romance was in the forefront of the story, and I don't think it actually is. So I think if you are avoiding this book because of the romance, you should not, because I felt like that wasn't really the focus of at least this book. Maybe it is in later books, but in this book, I felt like that was not the focus at all. And that kind of threw me for a loop because I just expected it to be something else. And again, it wasn't good or bad. That portion was not good or bad. It was just interesting. However, I just felt like a lot of the stuff that was happening was kind of like I said, boring and kind of humdrum, and I was just kind of waiting for the plot to kick in a lot of the time. And it's not like there's nothing happening, but I just was like, where is this going? Why do I care? Why does it matter? And then when you get to those parts, it just seemed kind of rushed and odd. I'm not really sure how to describe it. Again, I go into a little bit more thoughts in that review, and I will let that speak for itself also. Overall, I finished it. It wasn't like I wasn't driven to finish it, but I did find it a little boring, a little slow, and a little like, where is this all going type of a thing. I kind of figured out the twist, and I don't know. I didn't really buy that she could outthink these like strategists. I don't know. If you read it, you know what I'm talking about. But overall, this was just not what I was expecting, and I will continue because I want to know what happens. But if the second book is like this one, I'm not sure I will read the third. And I just don't understand the hype for this. I'm really sorry. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars because I did finish it and I wanted to finish it. But I don't get the following or the hype for this. I don't know what to tell you. The next book that I finished in February is Blood of Elves by Adrian Sapkowski. So this is the first novel in the Witcher series that's apart from the short stories. And while I did like this, I actually preferred The Last Wish over this one, which is the first book of short stories, which actually really shocked me because I thought the short stories would be my least favorite books of the series. Granted, I haven't read that many of them, but I thought that would be my least favorite and I really liked them. And so I thought it's only going to get better from here. But I didn't like this one as much as The Last Wish. It was still interesting. I'm not going to say it wasn't interesting. It was still interesting. I just felt like, so I was listening to them. I listened to The Last Wish. I listened to this one. Most of the time, I felt it was harder for me to pay attention to what was going on and to truly grasp what was happening and to absorb everything, I guess is the better word. I found it hard for me to absorb all of the things that were going on with all of the changes in perspective and different things that were happening. And maybe it would have been less confusing had I been physically reading it. So I will kind of leave that up to interpretation because It may not actually be confusing if you're reading it, because maybe you're able to grasp the perspective that you're reading faster that way. But for me, it was kind of jarring, and I didn't understand how we were going from Geralt's perspective to Ciri's perspective to Yennefer's perspective to King Visimir's perspective. And also, this is a side note, I'm going to interrupt myself. King Visimir and Witcher Vesemir. Why would you do that? It just makes it confusing, and then it makes me feel like I'm saying one of their names wrong constantly and I have to double check myself. Why would you do that? Just like Sauron and Saruman. Like, it's confusing. It's confusing, and people should not do that. Adrian Sokopsky, please don't do that anymore. It's already done. It's already happened. We can't take it back. But they would say King Visimir, and I would be like, wait, oh, not Vesemir, not Geralt's trainer. I don't know. I was just so confused, but some of that was just a little annoying to me. Back on topic. So maybe it would have been less confusing had I been reading it and able to catch on to the different perspective changes faster. However, there's also a lot left out. So I don't know how to, I'm going to give you an example of this because I don't really know how to explain it that well. But like, a situation would happen and you as the reader don't know what just happened, but the characters would react to it. So Ciri's training, right? This is an example I guess we can give you. Ciri's training with Yennefer. I'm sorry if this is a spoiler. I don't have another way to explain it. And she's like, okay, that's okay. Try again. See if you can do it. More power this time. Maybe you'll be able to do it. And then you just read Ciri's reaction going, oh, I didn't mean to do that. And Yennefer's like, oh, yeah, that was bad. And then you move on. But you don't actually know what just happened. And I think that really irritated me because I like to be visually immersed in the stories. So like, if you're telling me, I don't know what happened, but like, I'll make a scenario up. Say Ciri was training and she was using magic and she blew up a mountain. And it's like, and then the mountain blew up and this happened and this happened. At least you know why she's going, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Like you are following, you're tracking with them. But this was just like, an event was happening that was not described to you. And then you're getting the characters' reactions to it. And I just didn't like that. I just didn't like it. But it was okay. Like, the story was okay. It was flowing. Things were happening. But I feel like because of that, you're kind of lost. Because you're not being told part of the story. And I just want to know. I want to know the event that you're reacting to. I want to know everything about it. And even if it's boring, I don't know. I just would like to know instead of left wondering what just happened. And then focusing on that and not what's happening in the rest of the book. But, and this is obviously like high fantasy, so things can be slow moving at times, fast at other times. And so, you know, it's building to a lot. This is a pretty lengthy series. It's not like a trilogy. So I do want to continue. I'm a little nervous to continue, but I do want to continue and see where the story goes. I heard that in certain books that Geralt is not really the main perspective, as in, it's constantly changing a lot of different perspectives, like Yennefer or whoever. And there's some books where Geralt's like barely in it. And while I like Yennefer in other perspectives, Geralt is the perspective that I really want. And so I'm a little nervous to continue and read the entire series because his perspective is my favorite. But I also want to know what happens, so I will eventually, even if it takes me a long time. But yeah, just some food for thought about that. And my little irritations with the different writing, but it's still good. It's still The Witcher. It's still fun. I will say though, if you've watched the show, this can feel like a lot of repeating information, but it's also done differently because the show does deviate from the books in some ways. So some of it may feel repeating and some of it would feel new. Hopefully I can surpass the show at this point and then we'll continue the story on my own. Oh, and I did give this 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in February was Serendipity, edited by Marissa Meyer. This is an anthology of a bunch of short stories, all based around different love tropes. And the kind of idea they were throwing out was that they took these different tropes and they like twisted them on their head. So like the one bed trope or whatever it was, and they would kind of use that in a way to creatively tell the story. This one was okay. I originally was gonna buy this. And then I saw that it was coming on Scribd, and so I didn't, and I'm actually really glad that I didn't buy it because there were 3 stories that stood out to me out of the entire anthology, and I believe there's 10 total, and only 3 of those were ones that I was like, yeah, that was pretty good out of 10. So it was kind of like subpar as a whole, but I did really like a couple of those stories and I thought they were done well. So it was, I just felt kind of conflicted about it. So the one that Marissa Meyer wrote, of course, was a really good one. And I love Marissa Meyer. And then there was one, it was like the New Year's Eve lock-in. That one was really good. The writing was really funny and the narrator on that was really, really good. And so that story was really enjoyable and I really liked that one in particular. And then the last one, it was like this like matchmaking program that this character had developed. That one was also pretty good and the narrator on that also helped like make it come alive more. But the rest of them were just kind of okay. And granted, it's a short story, contemporary romance. It's not going to be mind-blowing or life-changing, but I felt like most of the stories were just okay. And the only reason I gave this 3 stars, was for those 3 stories that I shared with you earlier, because if it hadn't been for those 3 stories, this would have been like a 1-star, 2-star situation. But because of my enjoyment level of those, it brought the star rating up because I felt like I can't criticize this. I can't say, oh, I really liked these and then gave the book 1 star. So I was struggling a little bit with the rating system with this one, but we settled on 3 stars because of the stories that I did enjoy. So it wasn't great as a whole. However, I would say if you can get a hold of those 3 stories that I've mentioned and you want to read them, I would do it because it might be worth it just for those stories. And no one's stopping you from, picking that up from the library and just reading those 3 short stories and not finishing the book and then putting it down because they're each individual stories. So I would say if you can, get a hold of those, grab those 3 stories and read those, and you think it would be fun and you think you would enjoy them, I would say go for it. They're worth it. They were funny, enjoyable, and the narrators were good. So that was that book. The next book that I finished in February was actually my bookish box sprayed edges shelf jar pick, which was An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. And I really liked this book. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I get the hype for this book. It's a very well done fantasy series, and that's just from me reading the first one. I haven't read the rest of the series, but it's very well done. The world building was good. The horrific situations that the characters are faced with and find themselves in is very hard but accurate. And the characters themselves struggling with their inner battles and the unknown dangers, as well as what they believe is right and wrong, is something you understand and you can like get behind, and you can you understand why they're facing that. You understand why it's hard. You understand why they're wrestling with this right and wrong and why they have to stand up for their beliefs. And it's just something you can just feel and get behind. So I like that all the situations that the characters are faced with and how dynamic it is. It's not shying away from tough things. It's not shying away from slavery. It's not shying away from how horrible it is when an entire nation or government or military or whoever it is. I believe this is based on ancient Rome, like how horrifying it is when those that are in charge and see themselves as better than you as the emperor, how they will treat fellow humans. It's terrible. But this doesn't shy away from how people can be terrible and how you rise up in that adversity, and also how being a part of that society does not define you as a person if you are willing to reject that evil. And I really appreciated that. So it's very good. I really liked it. However, I will say, while there's a lot going on, there's not a lot explained as to what's happening. So for instance, there's these, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's this lore or mythology that some believe to be false and just kind of fairy tales. And then it kind of comes into play at some part in the story, but you don't really get explained what's happening or how that's coming into play, or how people have viewed this as dead for all these years or not accurate at all, and how suddenly they're coming out and why and what that means and what they can do. That's not really explained or explored. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's explored later on in the books and it becomes a bigger role in the later books because this is a quartet. But in this book in particular, it's not really touched on. It's more so building the background of the 2 main characters, and then kind of another perspective that I believe you get it later on in other books. So it's kind of just building all of this. It's a lot of build up. It's a lot of world building, which is all good. It's not boring or anything, but there's just a lot of things that are building upon one another for the rest of the series. So it's kind of a lot, and it leaves you with a lot of questions, but it is setting it up for a lot of different directions it can go, and you're kind of wondering where it's going to go. So overall, it was very, very good. I really liked it. I will continue the series. My husband loves this series and he's so excited that I'm reading it now. But It was really good. I understand why people love it so much. Another book that I read in February was A Portrait of a Scotsman by Evie Dunmore. This is the third installment in the League of Extraordinary Women series. I absolutely love this series, spoiler alert a little bit, but I absolutely love this series. I think it's so good. And this just came out last September, so this is the newest installment. The fourth and final installment is coming out in September of this year. And this was also a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I didn't actually know that until right before I read this, that it was a Hades and Persephone retelling. And I do like how she did it. I thought it was very well done. And it was also like relevant and interesting to the time. So like I said, I love this series. This one was no exception. I really liked this one. It was very good. I will admit that I was not initially very excited or interested in following Hattie's perspective. Out of the 4 women of this friend group, this is probably one of my least favorite perspectives that we were going to be following, but I was pleasantly surprised because Hattie faces a lot of issues that were very important to discuss, and I appreciated that a lot. And watching her grow and being thrust into this marriage against her will and having to deal with that at this time says a lot about her as a character, and also why women need choice and how we're still fighting these situations even today. How it may look differently, but we're still kind of battling that as women today. And I just thought it was really good that it was touched on. And also it's really cool because at first Hattie kind of is supportive of the suffrage movement that she's a part of in this friend group, but she also doesn't truly grasp why it's such a big deal until she's put in this situation where she's forced into a marriage that she doesn't want because society tells her she has to. And then it kind of clicks for her, and how she kind of owns her portion of the suffrage movement from that point on. I thought that was really well done and really cool to see, because you kind of see her in that light occasionally throughout the series, but it was just cool that it became her own story and how she developed ownership over her opinions instead of just being a pawn. I really loved Lucian as a character, even though he also had a lot of growing to do in this book. He's very like a dark, sultry character. He's the, Hades-esque type character, so it was really cool to see him play out. And you do get hints of him in other books, which I thought was really cool, because when I was reading the other books and they mentioned this character, and then I realized that character was the main love interest in this, I was like, what? And it made a lot more sense to me why it was so dark. And so the way she played that out and developed him and made it all work together was really cool. I really liked it. And I just love how Evie Dunmore can take this series and delve into and deal with really hard topics in the midst of romance. I just really like it. I like the commentary on women's rights and sexuality and people that are in a lower class of society and how they're treated as less than. There's so many things that she touches on in these books that is so important and just really stood out to me and spoke to me, because she even delves into this in the little acknowledgments about how women in this day and age were not told about any sort of sexual activity. They were told that it was wrong and less than, and they shouldn't think about it or know anything about it. So they had no education about it whatsoever. And then they're just kind of thrown into a wedding night good luck, and how that can be very damaging for women and very traumatic. And I like that that's being brought up in conversations, because that's still kind of a thing happening today in some ways. And it's very important to not do that to women, and to understand that, that sexuality is a healthy and important thing, and to not talk about it like that was very cool. And I liked that she brought that up, especially in this context, because that happened and it still happens today, but not as drastically. And I just like that she was able to delve into that topic. And I just like that she was able to deal with that in the society and just have a conversation about it. It was just so good. I really like that Evie Dunmore does that, and I think it's very important. And that's probably why I really like this series, is because it's not just a light and fluffy romance. There are hard things that are happening in the world that she's dealing with and that the characters are dealing with, and it's not brushed under the rug. And I just love it. I love that so much. So, loved this book. Can't wait to read the last one. I'm actually really sad that the last one is coming out in September, because then it's gonna be over. And then what am I gonna do? I don't know, but I'm excited to read the next book. The last book that I read in February that was completely unplanned was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This just came out recently, a week ago. It just came out in February, and I had actually put it on hold in my Libby app because I thought this will take forever to get to me. I might as well put a hold on it now. And if I wait and put a hold on it, it'll be like next year before I can read this. So I would like to kind of be able to keep up with some things out of my comfort zone, new release wise, to be able to talk to you guys about in case you aren't interested in just fantasy. So I thought, let's throw a thriller in there. I'll read that one. I read the guest list last year. Maybe I can read this one this year. And then it came out of nowhere and was like ready for me at the end of February. And I was like, I'm not ready for you. And then I just thought, maybe I can finish this in like 4 days and I can get it into my reading wrap up. It just kind of hit at the right appropriate time on audiobook for me to be able to listen to it while I was like doing chores and cleaning and cooking and a lot of things that I had to do this weekend. So it kind of worked out that I was just able to listen to the whole thing while I was doing these tasks. So I was able to finish it in like 2 days, but don't let that fool you on my rating. Oh, you saying hi? He's over here getting pets. You saying hi? He's a good boy. He's resting his face on my hands. It's really cute. Yeah. Hi. You say hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Whoop. Look. Say hi. Oh, okay. Back to nappies. He's got one of his dog beds right next to me in front of the bookshelf, and he lays in it and sleeps in it sometimes, and it's so cute. He was doing it the other day while I was filming, and he was like falling asleep right next to me, and it's really adorable. So the Paris apartment. Overall, it's fun. It's enjoyable to listen to. It was really easy to listen to, especially because I feel like sometimes when you're listening to high fantasy or really complicated worlds or really complicated situations, it can be hard to follow while you're really immersed in doing other tasks or chores or things. This is not one of those books. I felt like I could absorb everything that was going on while still doing other stuff. So it was really nice to be able to listen to it while I was going about my day. So it was really easy to listen to and to follow. And it was just okay. I felt like on the thriller side, it's much more tame than other thrillers I've listened to. I don't get like the thrill necessarily. There's like a couple of points where maybe it was happening. I don't know if I said any of this about any of their books, but I'll tell you this about this one. You're following a sister who is going to stay with her brother in his Paris apartment, and she's kind of running away from a situation and just needs out and to kind of have a new start. He knows that she's coming. They've corresponded about this, but then when she shows up, he's missing and nobody can tell her where he is. And it's a very closed community apartment building. So she's like not interrogating or interviewing, but she's kind of like trying to figure out what happened to her brother. Where is he? It doesn't seem like he left. He's not answering my phone calls or my texts. And she's kind of like trying to interact with all these people in this apartment building to figure out what's going on. And the story kind of goes from there. And one of the things I did like about this book is I liked that it was a brother-sister aspect. So like the brother's missing and the sister's trying to figure out what happened. She's trying to find him. She's trying to save him, whatever the situation looks like. I did really like that it was a brother-sister element. I thought that was really cool and pretty well done, and delving into their relationship, the warm and fuzzies, and also the difficult things that they either had to work through or haven't worked through and they're just thinking it in their heads. I liked that. I liked the dynamic of that. However, I feel like the author, and this would not matter to you if you did not read her previous works, but I feel like the author tends to have some familiar characters and situations in her books. And I'm saying this just from reading the guest list and this one, that it felt a little bit like she relied on some previous characters and plots, or some of the same situations and character plots to push the story forward, or just like to create a big cast of characters, but then it felt like a lot of them were the same as her guest list book. But it's also not like copy and paste. So it's kind of hard for me to differentiate between those two things without saying she took this character and put it in this book. But I feel like she took this type of character, like this innocent girl that was corrupted, or this lonely wife that wants to cheat on her husband. Like, I'm not even giving you like the exact scenarios, but it just seems like she's kind of reusing things that she had done previously. And maybe that's because it's really hard to write a huge cast of characters and have these different dynamics and motivations all weave together and it makes sense, but also not be the same thing. Maybe it's really hard. I don't know. I don't write thrillers, but it did feel like that a little bit to me just from reading the guest list and then reading The Paris Apartment. I could kind of like see the comparisons in a lot of the ways, but it's not the same story. And I don't want you to think it is the same story, but that's just kind of something I noticed. That's just how it felt to me. The ending was interesting, but I did guess the perpetrator pretty early on, even though it wasn't necessarily done the way that I thought it was going to be done. There was, though, this still irritates me right now. There was one character that is in a good portion of the book off and on, because he's not in the apartment building, so he's like an off and on character. Something happens to him, not like he's attacked or whatever, but like something happens to him. And you never find out how that's resolved, ever. You don't know what happened to him. You don't know if he's okay. You don't know if he's, well, I don't want to like build this up, but you just don't know. You have no idea. He just like dropped out of the story, and that really bothers me, because even though he was like a side-ish, main-ish character, you're just gonna tell me, you're just gonna drop that on me and not give me a resolution? That really upsets me, and I want to like email her and be like, what happened to this character? Because I would like to know. Maybe that won't bother you, but it bothered me. Overall though, I would say if you like more tame thrillers or thrillers in general, and you like a lot of family drama within those thrillers, I think you would really like this book. It's also kind of a lot of like rich people drama and some sinister undertones, but there's a lot of family dynamics, and I think that if you like that and you like reading about dysfunctional family drama, then you would like this. And overall, this was okay, but it was not my personal taste, and so I didn't enjoy it that much. So I did give it 2.5 stars. All right, everyone, well, that was it for today's video and me rambling and ranting and raving about all of the books that I read in February. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.